Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Allison from Redmond Mag, and I'd like to thank y'all for joining us today. I am thrilled to welcome you to today's event entitled How to Design Secure Protection for Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Environments, sponsored by Veeam. Before we begin, I just want to cover a few housekeeping details. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please make sure to type those in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you. Veeam has provided some resources which correspond with today's event, so please take a moment to check those out. They are located to the right of your audience console. Today's webcast is also being recorded, so keep an eye out for a link in your email to rewatch the presentation or share with a colleague. And now, I'm so thrilled to announce our speaker for today. We have the pleasure of hearing from Hani Immam, Senior Software Engineer, and Sebastian Onofrei, Senior Systems Engineer with Veeam Software. So we are in for a great event, and with that, I'll pass the time over to Sebastian to get us started.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Allison, for the lovely introduction. And welcome to our webinar. Today, Hani and I will try to capture your attention by addressing the most hand with cloud, which is security, and how to design a secured ecosystem for both hybrid and multi-cloud environments to protect yourself against cyber threats with Veeam. My name is Sebastian. I'm a senior cloud specialist at Veeam, focusing on the EMEA market. And for those of you who are new to the Veeam world, Veeam is the most trusted backup and recovery provider worldwide, being the #1 market leader in this space, offering a wide portfolio of solutions and services that protect and recover customer data, either that is on premises or in the cloud. And with me, I have my colleague and counterpart, Hani Immam. Hani, would you like to say a few words to everyone?
Thank you, Sebastian, for that lovely introduction as well. And thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us. My name is Hani Immam, and I'm the Public Systems Engineer at Veeam. We are looking forward to have this session today and share our thoughts about backup security with you. Back to you, Sebastian.
Perfect. Thank you, Hani. So this session will be around 60 minutes long, depending on how chat we get, and we will take together a journey to discover first whether or not security is still a thing nowadays. Spoiler alert, it is. What are the top 5 security best practices to become resilient in case of a cyber attack? The core section of our webinar will put into focus on how we apply these best practices and shed some light on how Veeam can help your company to limit the impact of a security breach that targets either on-premises infrastructures, cloud infrastructures, or even SaaS applications. And last but not least, the key takeaways. By the way, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please don't be shy. Ask us any questions. Hani and I would be more than happy to hear your thoughts. So, is security still a thing nowadays? Now, based on the testimonies of around 2,000 companies, we've asked how many ransomware attacks suffered in the last 12 months. And 80% of them reported at least one ransomware attack. That's scary, isn't it? Now, what is even more frightening is that almost 50% of them weren't hit only once, but 2 or 3 times only in the last year. So is security still a thing? I would say yes. As ransomware is one of the worst kind of disasters that will always push your security strategy to their limits. But out of this 85%, how many companies were able to recover the data without paying a ransom? Only 16%. And be rest assured that every one of these companies had some form of disaster recovery plan, but they fell short recovering their data because their existing backup solution wasn't designed to function at a scale of a ransomware attack. And you hear this stuff is happening to other people or companies. You know it does. But right, our brain is wired in a way that we always think that this could never happen to us, right? Now, think about it like this. An attacker has an unlimited amount of time to attack you and only needs to be successful once in order to make a profit. Only once. Defenders, on the other hand, must be 100% accurate 100% of the time to avoid a costly breach. This is the reason why security teams are investing in incident response tools and services to react faster once a breach is detected. And all these programs include the restoration of data from a reliable backup to ensure that the attack has been contained. Therefore, containing the breach and making sure that you have not lost data means there's no need to pay a ransomware with the only hope that your data is recoverable. Now, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're still on-prem or you've started your journey to cloud. The threat of an attack remains the same as it's still your responsibility to protect your data. Security is not the new kid on the block, right? There are a lot of monitoring tools on the market, penetration testing tools, services that will allow you to protect yourself against a security breach. So with all these new defenses in place, why is ransomware still successful? Now, one obvious answer is that malware is being created and is evolving, can be detected. There are 1 million pieces of malware created every single day. And even if we would catch 99% of these threats, there are still 10,000 of them that get by undetected. Unfortunately, another issue is that companies don't look at security comprehensively, especially in cloud. Many companies are forced to build holes in their defenses, either to meet business requirements, or their networks are so complex that vulnerabilities are built into the fabric of their architecture. Now, based on the last 10 years of attacks, the most common security breaches in a ransomware attack will always try to find vulnerabilities either in processes, technology, but also people. And this everything translates into untested backups, misconfiguration, poor password policies, lack of network segmentation, missing patches of a successful attack. So how do you stop ransomware from being effective? Hani will share the top 5 security best practices to becoming resilient in front of an attack. Hani, over to you.
Thank you. All right, so to talk about like the 5 best practices that we are recommending, starting with the first rule, which is the golden rule. The golden rule that many backup administrators try to follow to be sure they have backups when they need them is the 3-2-1 rule. And Veeam added an additional 1 in the 0 that just to make it more comprehensive and secure. That rule recommends to have 3 different copies of your data on 2 different media types and 1 offsite copy. Veeam's recommendation to have one of those copies additionally in an offline or an immutable storage to always be able to recover with 0 errors. This rule helps administrators have enough copies stored safely to be able to recover when they're needed the most. Now, moving on to the second best practice is to utilize the technology that can help protect our data's integrity the most. Leveraging immutable storage to store your backups and helps safeguard your data. Immutable storage does that through the WORM technology, which is write once and read many. In other words, once data is stored, it cannot be changed, modified, or deleted until its retention expires, which is set by the administrator. Immutable storage is one of the most recommended way to secure your data and make sure you keep its integrity, and you will be able to recover a true unaltered data when you need it. Now, looking at the third best practice is isolating your production account from your backup account. And that can be by storing your data in a separate data center out in the cloud if your production runs on-prem, or if you are 100% in the cloud, sending your backups to a different account. This way, if one of those accounts or locations got compromised, your other location or account won't be, and you will be able to recover. This is just one of the additional security layers that can be added to your security posture to make sure you have multiple layers of protection for your data, because the single one is not going to be enough. Now, moving to the fourth best practice, and this is a practice that is recommended by hyperscalers as well, is the least privileged access. This means each user starts with 0 permissions to access any sort of data. Those permissions get added as access is needed. A lot of organizations administrate users as groups, and in a world where rotation in the workforce is quicker than ever, you want to make sure that new hires don't get access to everything immediately. And even on a user level, cyber attackers are using phishing as a method to attack an organization. To avoid a blast radius of attack, limiting users' access will limit the radius of the attack if the cyber attackers got access to that user's credentials and were able to infiltrate into the environment. Now, final recommendation, the fifth, that's around authentication and encryption mainly. Authentication methods now can be more secured with multi-factor authentication to add more requirements for access. Passwords can be leaked or discovered, but having to authenticate with something other than that to authenticate that the user must have adds another layer of security or organization data. Role-based access control, we touched on it in a little bit in this last slide with users, and this can be used to enforce a policy on a group of users easily, as permissions can be set to the role or group quicker and more efficiently. Finally, leveraging the key management service to encrypt your data and avoid sensitive data from getting leaked, as this could injure your organization's brand name and can help make sure your data does not get lost. Now, when thinking of ways to try and implement all these security measures to work with your backup solution, things can get messy and stop working. That is because organizations are having to either go with legacy solutions that don't work well with modern applications or protect cloud infrastructure in the hybrid era that we live in, and most importantly, are not up to speed on how to defend organizations against modern cyber attacks. And the other option is platform native, that is limiting to protect just a single platform, where organizations are now running on multiple platforms that can add an overhead and does not have the true backup features, and can as well control organizations into where to store and restore their data. And since backup is the last line of defense, you always want to make sure that your backup solution and strategy ensures that your data will be secured against any cyber attacks. Your data can be recoverable, and backups are tested to make sure they are restorable instead of figuring this out during a disaster. And finally, you having control of your data and not the platform you are using for your backups, meaning being able to store your backups anywhere you want and being able to restore them anywhere as well without being limited to a single platform. And that's what we're going to talk about and show right now with Sebastian.
So, thank you, Hani. So, Veeam empowers full data security, data recovery, and data freedom for your hybrid or multi-cloud environment, offering one single service, one single platform, a single pane of glass to protect both on-premises and cloud. Which is the name of this service? Veeam Data Platform. Again, Veeam Data Platform provides data resiliency and security through secure backup and fast, reliable recovery solutions for both hybrid or multi-cloud in one single platform. We integrate seamlessly with all major cloud hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, using cloud-native technologies. We offer native backup and application mobility for Kubernetes workloads, but we also have integrations with some of your most data-intensive SaaS workloads, like Microsoft 365 and Salesforce. Now, in terms of services that we protect, we have a long history in protecting on-premises environments. Either those are virtual, like VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, Red Hat, or physical, like Windows, Linux, or applications like databases, Oracle, SAP HANA, or even unstructured data like NAS, NFS, or shares. But with Veeam Data Platform, you can protect cloud as well. I remember 4 years ago, by the way, when I joined Veeam, we were just scratching the surface by protecting Amazon EC2 instances by creating only cloud-native snapshots. As you can see, we have come a long way, and now we have a large portfolio of cloud services under our umbrella. Either that is in AWS, like EC2, RDS, DynamoDB, EFS, FSx, S3, or in Azure, like Azure VMs, SQL, Files, Blob. By the way, in the next release that is around the corner, we will protect Cosmos DB and Microsoft Entra ID as well. That's pretty cool, isn't it? But we're not limiting to this. We're also protecting Google Cloud and SaaS services, again, like Microsoft 365 or Salesforce. There's really this kind of holistic play going on here where we aim to have a little piece of technology available for you no matter what your plans are in the cloud. Now, most probably the journey to cloud has already started for many of you, but not always in the same way, right? It's paved with different intentions. Some of you continue to rely on your on-premises infrastructure and prefer to use cloud solely for data protection like ransomware, or have it at the DR side, or let's say use that infinite scaling for backups and archives. Or the latter, you have taken things one step further and you are committed to run your business, or let's say parts of your business, in the cloud. So let's take each scenario one by one and get started by checking how does Veeam helps your on-premises or hybrid ecosystem leverage the cloud for data protection. What customers already love about Veeam is that regardless of their on-premises footprint or flavors, either it's virtual, physical, or they have specific applications running on those instances, Veeam Backup and Replication, part of the Veeam Data Platform, which is the Veeam's flagship product, our bread and butter on which we've built our brand upon, can back up all these workloads in a cost-effective and secured manner and ship these backups to a repository. Now, what do we target as a repository? We can target directly the cloud object storage. Why? There are multiple reasons behind it. First, because cloud offers a durable, scalable, immutable, and cost-effective repository to store backups. And second, cloud object storage usually sets the scene for the golden rule of data protection that Hani mentioned earlier, the 3-to-1 rule. And this is important, especially if you're aiming for a hybrid approach. An alternative to copying your backup data directly to cloud object storage is to target the on-premises repos first by pushing the data in cloud later on, let's say to a secondary site. And here the Veeam scale-out backup repository comes into play. Actually, a little bit based on the scale-out backup repository because this is a very important feature of our product. Now, the scale-out backup repository is a repository system that horizontal scales and offers multi-tier storage of data support that consists in 3 tiers. The first tier, which, as the name suggests, is the level used to access your data as fast as possible. Either it's from a DAS, from a dedupe appliance, or from warm storage. This will be the first copy of your data and needs to be available fast. The second tier is the capacity tier that can extend the performance tier by transporting the data from the performance to the capacity tier for long-term retention. This tier can come in handy when, let's say, you either are running out of storage space in the performance tier. This is an example that frequently happens to customers that generate a large amount of data. Or it makes sense to leverage the capacity tier when your organization's policies allows you to store only a certain amount of data on your extents, while the outdated data should be stored elsewhere. Or it can have also a security aspect as well. And coming back to the 3-to-1 rule that also Hani mentioned earlier, you store the bytes to ensure its safety in case of a disaster. And last but not least, we have the archive tier. That again acts as an extension to the capacity tier. This is the perfect tier in scenarios where, let's say, you have a lot of rarely accessed data that can be stored in an archive, or all about costs, right? You want to save costs and space on storing archive data. But what if you are not leveraging the cloud today? Okay, do you have any options? Well, you can tier the data or the backup data to tape. If I know that, for example, in order to be compliant, I need to keep archival data for 99 years in an air-gapped ecosystem, IP address associated to it, backup to tape can be your perfect fit, okay? But you might consider, okay, Seb, what year is this? Is tape still a thing? Well, yes, it is. The tape is being used today is also changing. In the past, it was just for long-term retention. If you look at the tape now, it's used for short-term due to its immutability characteristics, because tape itself, if you remove it from the drive, you make it immutable. With you, so air-gapped, and you can take it also offline somewhere else. And that's the whole thing about tape. 10 years ago, we have stopped using tape as the handling cost was high. But if you look today at the handling cost and you compare it to the ransomware cost associated to a recovery, let's say, you'll notice that the cost is. Now, one of the most common questions that I receive in my customer calls, or even during the webinars like this one, is what is the difference between all these buzzwords? I have mentioned cloud immutability with S3, Azure Blob, Wasabi. I've also mentioned hardened repository. Yes, we have a hardened, that's good, but this also means that it's tied to immutability. And I've also mentioned that the tape is air-gapped. Again, it offers those worm capabilities. Aren't all of them redundant? No, they are not. These terms are usually mingled or even being interchanged, but that is not really the case, because immutability is not the same thing as hardened and is not the same thing as air-gapped. Immutability is about protecting against modification and deletion of your data. Hardened means you're looking through your infrastructure and see where those attack factors are, and you try to close down as many attack factors as possible without tempering your production or your organization. And air-gapped is about making sure that you have a copy of your data that's somewhere else offline. And some of you might challenge me further and say, yeah, but my data is already in the cloud and it's also air-gapped. Well, sort of. You have a logical air-gapped, but someone else can still log in to delete it. And you'll say, hold on, but it's immutable. No one can delete it. Yes, but if you have immutability in the cloud and you don't pay the bill, what do you think that it will happen? Your data will be deleted, right? And that's true because, let's say, as another example, if you accidentally set immutability for 99 years, now you will have to wait 99 years to clean it up unless you contact the cloud vendor. So as long as someone has control or access to the physical location where the data is residing, they can always have a way to delete it. If my memory serves me right, less than a month ago, Google accidentally deleted a large customer's infrastructure, leaving them with no DR site. Okay, so these things can really happen. And that's why we say that tape is physically air-gapped. For instances, you can take the tape with you, put it in a physical vault that nobody can touch it online. What I want to emphasize is that combining these three puzzle pieces, immutability, hardened, air-gapped, that's the real beauty, because here, once you understand these three concepts, it will lead you to designing a secure solution that will allow you to be bulletproof against ransomware attacks. But now the question comes, okay, what do I do with all these backups? We keep them in an untouched glass house and wait for a ransomware to hit? No, we believe that maybe you are missing an opportunity to leverage your own backup data, and at the end of the day, it's your investment to further enable other parts of your businesses. With Veeam Data Labs, we offer the ability to use your backup data and run a copy of your instances in an isolated network to perform any tasks outside of the production environment. Why is this valuable? Because, for example, you can provide self-service for your developers to spin up copies of the data as they design new features. Let's say you might provide sandbox environments for your IT operations to test new patches and updates. They are rolled out across the company. Or why not enable security teams as they can use copies to test for security vulnerabilities without disrupting the production. All use cases where Veeam can help your business to grow using your own data. Now the time comes where I want to restore the data, right? And Veeam Data Platform offers more than 100 restore options that you can leverage and to use to restore the data, for example, to AWS as an EC2 instance, to Azure as an Azure VM, or in Google Cloud as a Google Compute instance. This is a very common scenario when you leverage the cloud as your DR side, but also during the migration procedures, let's say from on-premises cloud vendor. Now, I haven't, it's not on the architecture slides, but you can also leverage disaster recovery technologies where we actually have the VM recovery orchestrator that will allow you to take this concept and scale it to Azure. You can go and pick an entire on-premises environment and push a button and say, boot this to Azure. Granted, it will take time as the physics don't go away, but you can use the cloud as a DR site, which is a lot cheaper, to be honest, than having something on standby on-prem. Or you can do the restore back to the on-premises, right? Either back to the original location or to a new one. And last but not least, we always keep an eye open on your backups as we monitor everything from start to finish by offering real-time monitoring, business documentation, and management reporting by either monitoring the state of VMs and their performance, or by generating reports for capacity planning and upgrade purposes, or by providing management teams with transparent and granular views of the virtual infrastructure from a business-oriented perspective. Examples on how Veeam Data Platform can help you detect a possible ransomware attack using a comprehensive dashboard. You can trigger real-time alerts that may detect a possible cyber attack. You can set up alarms that are looking not only at the backup data, but also to the production VM level itself. These rules, you can monitor spikes in the CPU usage, spikes in RAM, spikes in data store write rates, all things that can be signs of an encryption taking place. One of the key things is that during a ransomware attack, it's also important to have a historical data and understand when things took place. What's nice about this alarm is that it gives you a historical view of your virtual machines, so you can potentially say, hey, 7 days ago, we had a huge spike in our activity on a bunch of machines, and that might be a good place to look to start the recovery. The next alarm is about an increased size of your virtual machine. And the next one is the forensic process starts. You want to figure out what account is compromised. And this report helps you to figure out who changed what, when they changed it, and what specifically was changed during that period of time. So to sum up, we have discussed so far what Veeam has to offer. It protects your on-premises infrastructure. It stores the data on-premises or in cloud, either that is AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. Wasabi, so on and so forth, leveraging, by the way, all access tiers and storage classes available in the cloud. It can copy the data to a different location, either that is on-premises or in cloud. You can test the data before the restore process. You can restore the data either on-premises or in the cloud if you want to use it as a DR site. And last but not least, very important, it monitors your ecosystem proactively and report capabilities. Okay, But now you might be wondering, okay, Veeam, what do you do in a hybrid environment is cool, but how do I protect the cloud resources? How do I protect the cloud itself? Hani, take it away.
All right, let's dive into that. Before I do that, let me point out to the story of Codespaces, which the story is available online and you can read more about it if you want, as they had to issue a press release after the incident. What really happened is that they got attacked, just like any of the 85% of companies that were mentioned in the beginning of this webinar. When the attack occurred and they noticed that Codespaces attempted to do a restore, but they found that all of their data was held for ransom. They refused to pay the ransom, and the cyber attackers decided to delete everything. Codespaces was out of business within 12 hours. This is just to highlight the importance of backups and the backup strategy you implement, trying to squeeze that in within less than a minute story. But regardless, the cloud journey that involves customers taking multiple paths to reach their goal with the recent modernization that we're doing for applications. Each path has its own challenges that administrators have to overcome and make sure they do not break or lose anything. Sebastian technically showed one way that Veeam can help with that move, which was rehosting your applications in the cloud through flexible restores that capabilities that Veeam offers. But regardless which path you're gonna take, protecting that data will always be responsibility, and Veeam can help with that. Now, if we were to pick up from the point that Sebastian covered, how restores can be performed with Veeam, and assume that we rehosted a multiple tier application with a public subnet for customers to access and a private subnet that hosts the application, file server, database, and use AWS for the purposes of this scenario. But regardless which public cloud platform you use, you can assume a very similar process in the cloud. In this scenario, we also have volumes encrypted in two different ways. Some are encrypted with AWS managed keys, and the other set is encrypted with customer managed keys. Now, to follow the security best practice that I had mentioned earlier, we can install a Veeam server in a separate account than where the production data resides. That Veeam server can protect data across multiple accounts using IAM roles. Again, from our security best practice mentioned earlier, those roles permissions are set to only protect what needs to be protected or have access to services that are needed for backup and restore operations, hence giving the least privilege to those accounts. Every account you want to protect, you can add an IAM role in that account that Veeam can assume to protect the data you want within that account. Access to the Veeam server can be protected by leveraging MFA to allow users to access the console. And you can also leverage role-based access control to give different permissions to different users depending on their role and level of access within the Veeam console. And with the use of API, we can start our backup process by first creating that snapshot. We can, so now that we've assumed those roles, the APIs get sent and we create that snapshot. And we can also replicate those snapshots to a different region and account. You don't have to pick one. Veeam allows you to do both simultaneously. At this point, we followed another best practice that was mentioned earlier, and that is 3-to-1 rule. But it's still not quite the way that Veeam recommends. So let's keep going with this process. And at this stage, we take the snapshot, convert it into an image level backup, and store it in S3. That S3 bucket can have object lock enabled to give us the immutability we want for our sensitive data. And this allows us to check out another best practice that we follow, which is storing backups in an immutable fashion. Now, for our, that's again, depending on the volume type that we're protecting how it's encrypted. We can spin up those workers in the needed account to process that data. And the last step, that is being able to push those image level backups that we stored in S3 out to a different place. Whether that is back to on-prem or to a different cloud provider, now we can say that we are fully following the 32110 rule with Veeam standard. We have snapshots, replicas in other regions or accounts, backups. So that is the three different data types that we have. We have data stored on EBS volumes and in S3, so that's two different media types. The offsite copy can be considered either the backup in the different account or the backups that we can store back to on-prem or other cloud providers. And now the added one to the backups, which is immutable, which can be achieved with AWS S3 object log. And finally, Veeam runs health checks on those backups to check on the CRC of the metadata to ensure the backups are clean, recoverable, and available when you need them to have zero errors when it's time to do a restore. Speaking of restore, we talked about like how our backup capability and barely touched into our restore capabilities. And we do have almost as much ways to restore as we have to backup. You can perform restores from any of your backups that you've created, whether that is the snapshot, the replica, or image level backup. All those can be restored to either same location that the protected instance was running in, or to a new location with different settings that can be in a different region or a different account. And you will be able to modify the restored instance name, size, change network settings where you want it to run. Recovery can be a full VM. You can just restore the individual volumes or just individual files and folders to cut down on the restore cost. So to summarize what Veeam Data Platform can help customers achieve is cost savings with the backups through compression and custom worker profiles, secure backups that you'll be able to restore anywhere and any way you want. Sebastian, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Hani. Yeah, I was actually answering some questions into the chat window. Okay, so what have we discussed so far? Two aspects: how you can leverage the cloud for data protection and how to protect data in the cloud. But security at the end of the day in data protection is not only about infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. If you remember Hani's 5-step migration paths to cloud, one of them was the repurchase that allows you to migrate to a SaaS offering in cloud. And that leads me to Microsoft 365. Now, I bet that the vast majority of you present in this webinar, at least, are using Microsoft 365 on your day-to-day job, right? I know that I use it every day. It's simple, it offers powerful and intuitive services, but in the same time, we don't think that it offers a comprehensive Microsoft 365 data. So the natural question comes, does this type of service require a backup? And we believe that it does, and there are multiple reasons behind it. You need a backup solution for Microsoft 365 to prevent data loss from an accidental deletion. How many of you have deleted the wrong email or wrong items from a SharePoint? I know that I have. Another reason why you need a backup solution for Microsoft 365 is to protect your company for internal or external security threats. As we've discussed earlier, an attacker's priority, either that is internal or external attack, will always be to delete your backups. So you need something in place that will ensure immutability and multiple backup copies. Now, another example is depending on the industry that you activate, the legal compliance or regulations to keep all employee data for 7 years. This is a common best practice. But with Microsoft 365 built-in capabilities, you have this data available only for 1 month. A mature backup solution can also help you, let's say, to manage hybrid environments and hybrid deployments and migration from on-premises to cloud. And all these are reasons why you need to back up Microsoft 365 data. What's important to understand is that Microsoft 365 is in no way safe. In fact, it's currently being attacked, and critical data loss is a very common occurrence. In fact, 80% of attacks in some way involve Microsoft 365 apps. And that makes sense if you think of how email is one of the primary mechanisms used to breach systems, right? If you remember my first slide, why ransomware is still successful nowadays, it's because it points to weaknesses within processes, technologies, but also people. Now, in the last 12 months alone, 53% of organizations have experienced some form of data loss or corruption in any of their SaaS applications. What is more concerning is that only 24% of these organizations were able to recover 100% of their Microsoft 365 data in any given data loss incident. Now, clearly, it's not only about cyber attacks, which can cause data loss, but there is a lot of large variety of things that can go wrong. And there is a strong consensus among both SaaS admins and backup admins of what is the biggest root cause. Topping the list, of course, are the cyber attacks, but other considerations can be compliance, needing battery restoration capabilities, or mitigating user errors that are all represented here. Now, with all the customers, there is this misconception. Either those customers are starting from SMB up the way to enterprise. There is this misconception that even if I'm going with a SaaS product, Microsoft will take care of everything. It will take care of my infrastructure. It will take care of my platform. It will take care of my application, but it will also take care of my data. Now, this is false. The reality is that Microsoft will take care of the infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it is still your responsibility to protect the data. IaaS, PaaS, or even SaaS. Now, another aspect that you might be wondering is, let's see, how Veeam differs from Microsoft 365 built-in capabilities. To summarize the key elements on how Veeam can expand the capabilities beyond Microsoft 365 can offer by default, this can be data center replication, because the native solution is not designed to mitigate issues such as accidental deletions and ransomware. It only prevents downtime. And on the other hand, with Veeam, you can eliminate these data loss risks. Another reason is that the native solution offers limited recovery for recycle bins with only short-term recovery and no point-in-time capabilities. On the other hand, with Veeam, you can meet any recovery need for both short or long-term retention. The native solution offers security protection in place only for Microsoft infrastructure, while with Veeam, you get security protection of the data itself. Now, in terms of what services do we protect, we can either protect cloud, like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, One Business, or we can also protect on-premises, like SharePoint or Exchange. In terms of architecture, as I've mentioned earlier, we can protect both Microsoft 365, like Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams, but also on-prem as Exchange. Now, what do we target as a repository? Well, most of you will have a deja vu feeling from the previous slides, as Veeam is consisted across all products, and we can target on-premises repositories or any cloud object storage like AWS S3, Azure Blob, or IBM Cloud. To enhance protection of your data against disasters, you can extend your backups with copies cross-cloud or on-premises to cloud or to different tiers. Again, why? Because I want to add that extra layer of security. Remember the three, and I also want to be cost effective, and I want my backups to be immutable as well. What about the restore options? With Veeam Backup from Microsoft 365, we offer the Veeam Explorers for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. Each of these explorers are tailor-made for the applications, which allows you to achieve granular item-level recoveries and to save and export in file formats that are specific to the applications that you are using. By the way, we have more than 50 restore points available for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. We also have the self-service restore portal that allows IT administrators to delegate restore of emails, files, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams to their end users. Okay. And last but not least, we must monitor everything. Monitoring and reporting allows proactive monitoring of Microsoft 365 backup and storage resources through at-a-glance dashboard. Users receive alerts to resolve issues immediately, and you can leverage, let's say, SLA reports to ensure compliance of recovery point objectives like RPOs, and to be sure that these are all met. But is this all? Hani?
It's not. We still have one more thing to go through, and that is Veeam Data Cloud, which is our SaaS solution that offers customers with a backup as a service solution to protect Microsoft 365 data, Microsoft Azure environments, and offers Vault, which is a storage as a service solution, giving you a secure storage location to store your backups in without having to worry about provisioning storage accounts or having to predict cloud cost. The Veeam Data Cloud offering provides customers with a trusted industry-leading technology to protect and store data in a modern and secure way. Best of all is you do not have to plan for spending or think about it. This offering includes a fixed pricing that would include everything in. Now, the offering also includes the protection of the following workloads in Azure, Azure VMs, SQL files, virtual networks, as well as the Microsoft 365 offerings that were covered with the Veeam Data Platform are as well available within Veeam Data Cloud. And when we say everything is included, we actually mean it. The pricing that includes the core components that will be needed to run your backups, the networking to transfer the data, all the updates that will be needed to keep your data safe. Backup policies can be customized to your liking or providing a very granular role-based access control to different users. And you can also receive reports to provide you with analytics data about your backups. As a takeaway from this webinar, we would like you to keep the following in mind. Whether you're looking to protect your on-premise, cloud, or SaaS workloads, Veeam gives you the option. We are focusing most importantly on keeping your business running, and that is like our #1 goal in here. Now, if we grabbed your attention and this seemed interesting or something that you would like to test yourself, here are the QR codes that will direct you to our hands-on lab link, where you can have a 30-day free trial to test this. Even on your local environments, you'll still always have control of that backup data. And if you wanted to learn more about the granular capabilities that Veeam can help protect and restore your workloads. As well, this QR code will direct you to Veeam articles that you can read more about. And finally, an email that you can reach us out if you have direct questions that you can leverage as well. Feel free. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hani and Sebastian, for that presentation. Lots of great information there. We do have some questions in from the audience, and I want to remind the audience at this time, if you have any questions, please make sure to type them in, and I'll have these experts answer them for you. So the first question that we have here is from Lynn James. How should organizations approach designing a robust security architecture for hybrid and multi-cloud environments?
Okay, so there are multiple strategies here that customers can apply. First, your data needs to be encrypted. Either that is on premises, or especially if the data is in the cloud. Like Hani mentioned earlier, each cloud vendor has its own caveats. If I'm referring to what Hani showed earlier related to how AWS encrypts, say, the volumes, either using AWS native keys or customer managed keys, or if we're referring to Azure with AD encryption or encryption at host, Veeam can help you do that. Okay, so the first thing is that you need to encrypt the data. The second one is that you need to monitor and audit the configuration of all your clouds and also on premises. Again, Veeam can help you here because we offer one single console where you have visibility across all your backups, and all your resources, either those are on-prem, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Another reason is to enforce zero trust security. Always assume that you are under attack. And yeah, apply security patches as promptly as possible, as this is a very frequent way on how security breaches start. I think this answered the question.
Amazing, thank you. Our next question in comes from Sam. What percentages of enterprises are considering changing their primary backup solutions in 2024?
Oof. Okay. From our studies and the customers that we interact with and all the conversations that we are having, they are around 50% of the enterprises are considering changing their primary backup, mainly because these enterprise customers are not leveraging only one cloud vendor. They're managing a hybrid environment or a multi-cloud environment, and they want only one console to have visibility across everything.
Our next question in comes from Jeff. It says, are data protection budgets increasing or decreasing across enterprises in 2024?
Hani, would you like to take this one, or should I?
Sure, yeah. It's actually increasing due to the different factors of where data is being stored and not being able to keep track of the cost of the data storage that's in there, especially with the moves to the cloud and the many components that can be affected or add on to the budgeting for paying for those backup bills, whether that be like API calls, any sort of overhead charges from different technologies that might be leveraged across the cloud. So being aware of those, always good strategy, planning ahead as well, knowing where you're putting data and what's associated with where you're putting data as well.
That's amazing, thank you. Our next question in is, which type of crisis is the most common and has the largest impact on IT outages?
Oh, okay. I think we've already discussed this one during the earlier slides. So it's definitely ransomware and cyber attacks by far.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that has a huge impact on the brand name, as those cyber attacks can cause a lot of like data leaks, confidential data We don't want our data to be leaked out. And that's what cyber attackers are doing to hurt those organizations.
That makes complete sense. Thank you so much. We have our next one in from Victoria. It says, according to Veeam's state of the hybrid and multi-cloud in 2024 research breach, what consideration did enterprise name as most important when looking at a new backup solution? So I think the main part of it is what consideration did enterprises name as the most important when looking at new backup solutions?
Okay, from my point of view, it's to be consistently reliable. So you need to have something in place that works flawlessly from start to finish. Either you're doing a backup, you're creating a backup chain, a snapshot chain, or any kind of restore point. You want your data either to be backed up without any errors, and also during the restore process, you want the data back as fast as possible anywhere you want.
Yeah, and that can be helped as well with like one of the things that you mentioned, Sebastian, the testing those restores, like through secure restore, for example. One way that Veeam can help with that is always checking to see if the restore process is going to work in a sandbox environment without having any effect on the production environment.
Thank you, gentlemen. It looks like that's all the questions we have in for today. If we didn't get to your questions at this time, feel free to leave them in the Q&A box, and these gentlemen will always be able to answer those again later. But for now, it looks like that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Hani and Sebastian, for being with us today. And thank you for the audience for attending today's webcast. And of course, a special thank you to Veeam for sponsoring today's event. And this was presented by Redmond Mag. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks all.